Welcome to Truman's Town Hall with your host, Matt Truman.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back. This is part 7 in our series we've been doing the past few weeks, Aliens and Angels. So I think we'll start out tonight. I have just a little short video. If you haven't been paying attention much to the news lately, there was a reported attack in a small village out of Peru. And it was an attack that they were saying was an alien attack. They called them the face peelers. Did you guys hear that?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go. I'll share this little news clip here, and then we'll get on that topic and go from it from there.
The alleged alien attacks began in July this year. An isolated indigenous community in rural Peru claims so. Villagers say they were being harassed by strange beings, who even tried to kidnap a 15-year-old girl from the village. Locals say they saw armored aliens that looked like the Green Goblin, one of the arch enemies of the superhero Spider-Man. These so-called aliens have long heads with yellowish eyes, and they surf the wind with the help of their shoes. They rise up, then float at a height of about a meter. One of the villagers even shot what he called an alien, but the being didn't fall. It elevated further, then disappeared. Sounds shady, but just as curious, especially because of the timing. This comes just weeks after the US congressional hearings about UFOs. So obviously, the matter blew up. It fed into the global conversation on extraterrestrial life visiting Earth. Believers analyzed every bit of the grainy videos. Skeptics slammed them for, believing that aliens haunt Peru. After all, the alien quota is limited to America, at least according to Hollywood. Eventually, the news spread like wildfire. And it was time for authorities to get involved. The Peruvian Navy and police traveled to the village and began investigations, after which they concluded that the perpetrators weren't aliens, but members of illegal gold mining gangs who traveled from Colombia and Brazil. They used advanced flying technology like thrusters that allow people to fly, and terrorized the Peruvian community. Sounds slightly anticlimactic, but the gangs must be given points for creativity. And thankfully, this wasn't the beginning of an alien invasion for Peru.
All right, so that was one of the reports I saw. So they essentially discounted what the other villagers were saying. What are you guys' thoughts on this? I thought it was an interesting story.
I think that's the best part of it. It's like, so now we're debunking things by saying, oh yeah, they were using flying technology that like no one has. No, yes, sure. There are companies that have flying gear that have been trying to get it to market for a long time. And if you have the money to pre-order one, you got to put in like hundreds of thousands of dollars. So you're saying these gangs, these drug gangs, had tons of flying devices that they could, oh, there you go. It's explained. There you go. We're good. Brett, what do you think? Am I the only one thinking that's bonkers?
It's comical because we're talking about deep, thick jungle here. This is not wide open Autobahn, where they can just fly around at will. But to that point, we're talking about illegal gold miners, and yes, that has been a problem in this area for years. But the thing about that is that these villagers know about that storyline. They've dealt with these individuals and everything else for probably decades. And this incident with this 15-year-old girl, and I don't know if you guys had seen the other video, there's no context to really see how this other video plays into it. But I have that video as well, but you've probably seen it. It is a deceased man laying by the riverbank, and he is completely devoid of skin on his face. And
Yeah, I saw that.
these beings are called, they call them the pelakaras, which it means face peelers. And you've got this video that comes out around the same time. It's relatively recent. Hasn't been doctored or anything that I can tell. There's certain things that happen. One of the officers that's trying to move the body and all that, he slips and falls. And so if someone was to go in and try to do CGI or something on this stop movement stuff like it would be almost impossible. I mean, you're talking about, you can tell that it's true raw footage. And these people, they're shining lights up in the trees and all this. The one individual, the kind of the leader within that community, actually shoots a 12-gauge shotgun, point blank range at one of these creatures, and plainly says that it has no effect on them. So let's just say that if it's drone technology or jetpacks or something like that, even if they were wearing some kind of armor or something, it would knock them off trajectory. It would do something.
Yeah,
But that storyline makes no sense, and that they're just trying to get people move the focus away from this. But I don't believe that at all. I believe that they really encountered something. Yes.
That's a really good point, because even if you said, oh, well, they're rich because they've got all the gold miners, they've stolen all this stuff, right? Even if you said that they bought one of these things, you brought a good point that I didn't mention before, is all these things that are out there are fragile.
Yeah.
Like, anything that any of these drones that people are using, you see them flying in New York or something like that. There's one guy who had it in New York City, and he had like an assembly of 5 or 6 drones or something like that. But I think there's like a behind the scenes too, like, like where it's really, it's a cool video, but it was difficult and very precarious to do it. So yeah, you wouldn't be able to like run from people and these things. The technology is there.
And the villagers gave really descriptions of these things, that they knew that there was these things on their feet, on their shoes, and all this, and that they were wearing some kind of silver body armor, and they were basically flying around like the Green Goblin. I mean, right. Let's just move it into the theater of what if it was a military thing or something like that. That means that our technology is far exceeding stuff that we have any idea that we've got today. So right. I don't really entertain that, because why would you be down in the jungles of Peru floating around like the Green Goblin? I really think that this goes back to the folklore, the culture. This is the place where some of those pictures we've looked at before, Sacsayhuaman, all these places where they claim that the Nephilim or the giants or fallen angels, whatever, that these structures and things were built by these other beings. So the people of this region are familiar with these. I don't want to call them stories, because they believe them to be true. I mean, they went out in the middle of the jungle in the middle of the night with guns. So, I mean, they took this pretty seriously, and I think we should as well. So.
They certainly did.
And Bret, isn't Peru, isn't that area where the like the Indiana Jones movie that was laughable, the heads, right? Yeah, isn't that where they found?
Yeah, it was in South America. Yes, okay. The Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Yeah. Yeah,
Crystal Skulls. Yeah, that's what. Yeah. So,
and that whole storyline was basically centered around alien beings. The actual pyramid itself at the end was a ship, and they left and left a big crater that filled up with water, and Yeah. So yeah, to that point, that's like I said, this is well, even Ancient Aliens. All of this stuff is centered around either Egyptian or Peruvian. It's on opposite sides of the world, but China, Russia, there's all these places are these structures and things, and it's worldwide. So,
I'm looking at my notes over the last couple of weeks, and I didn't do much research this last week, but I did the week before. I have at the top of my notes Dr. Stephen Greer's YouTube video talking about 0-point energy, which was a Tesla energy source. And he's claiming that we mastered anti-gravity in 1954 from these crashed vessels, right?
yeah.
So, if that was true, then that would mean kind of like what you're saying. Well, military might have this, but look at how far advanced it would be. But it would also mean that what these Peruvians were encountering was military operatives. It wouldn't be just some schmucks out in the
Right.
trying to.
And not only they wouldn't just be everyday Joes either. They would definitely be special operations, some type of special operations command working that, because an everyday GI is not going to be flying around on a.
Well, even to that, think back about what I was talking about. You guys have seen the jet propulsion things or the water propulsion units that they use on the lakes and rivers and stuff. And just think about this: if these are miners, they're out there in the middle of the night in the jungle. They would get spooked by these people shooting at them with guns. You mean to tell me that they're not going to accidentally hit a tree or whatever and knock one of them to the ground? I don't buy that. This is an intelligence. Now we can get into, we haven't really discussed that. I don't like to put this stuff that we're seeing and hearing about from the government and all that into a box of quote unquote demons. There is a physicality to this stuff, and I think I've got my beliefs behind that, that what that might be. But I wanted to see maybe what you guys thought about that. How would you think that this would be a physical form? What would you call that if there's nothing from what Scripture says? Because I've heard this within even Christianity today, preachers and stuff that are starting to have to engage this topic, and they're coming out of the box saying that, well, we can't limit God's creative ability and all that there might be something else out there and all that. They're buying into this stuff without giving tangible biblical evidence of what this may be. Because like I said, and I think I mentioned it before, the Bible says that Eve is the mother of all creation. So if that is truly the case, then we don't have biological beings out here in the spatial realm. What's y'all's thoughts on that?
Well, this is interesting. That's an interesting question after we're in part 7. My first thought goes to, I might be pronouncing it wrong, chimera. Like it's
chimeras.
Chimera, yeah. But like it's a genetically modified hybrid, possibly infused with a demonic entity. Possessed by a demonic entity. But I also think it's possible, like when we're talking about, I like to say it is, aliens are demons, right? What we call aliens are demons. Now, there might be some military type facades going on, right? So maybe this was, maybe part of it was, but I don't know why the military would be, completely cutting someone's, or how they would even do it, how they would cut someone's flesh off their head, off their skull, but the rest of the body not be burnt and torched, But But what I was gonna say is like I think it's these are demonic portals that have opened and physically brought demons into this. I mean, it's kind of what we've talked about, that I think what Revelation says, right? When it's talking about all these strange locust type creatures and everything. Bringing the key of the pit from hell, right? Unlocking the pit of hell. I believe there are demons in hell, right? I mean, that's what the Bible says, right? It says that like hell was designed or built for the fallen angels, right?
Correct.
To contain them, and because they're that powerful, right? And unfortunately, because of the fall of Adam, we're subject to the same thing, right? If we don't believe in Jesus Christ, in our Lord, let's say, because, at the time, they didn't really know about Jesus, right? Way back, but by name. But so you've got these fallen angels, you've got, and I suppose they become these demonic creatures. They become even worse when bound in and waiting in hell. And geez, I'll let you guys speak. I'll just say one thing is I have a little bit of a different interpretation of heaven and hell than some. I think I don't think it's linear. Like in other words, I think for us everything happens in linear time for us. But our linear time doesn't match up to heaven and hell. And so I believe when you talk about those places being eternal, that they exist outside of our time. So all those people that are going to be in hell for eternity after Judgment Day, they're there now, in our now. They're there in our now, in our past, and in our future. Which would explain, to me, like that's the only thing that explains things like people having stories about afterlife, having a vision where they're in hell, or some of them see like Jesus, and then they're taken to hell, and then they change their lives because they come back from the dead, and they come back from near death. I don't know. So that I gave all my ideas. You guys turn. I'm going to sit out now.
Yeah. So when I first heard about this, I was like, what? So you have an entire village out essentially hunting these things down, whatever it is, whether it be aliens or gold miners or a military operation, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. No one got hurt as far as I know, right? On either side, right? There was that video that you were talking about with the guy that was down. That was a separate video, though, I think.
Right.
So, like, there was one night where all the entire village saw these things flying around in the air about a meter off the ground, as they said.
Yeah.
Which is about 3 feet up.
Right.
Well,
what prompted all this was the 15-year-old girl that claimed that she was being abducted by these, and so she had lacerations. This was real cuts.
Sure.
You can watch there. A lot of them have her face and stuff blurred out, but you can go to actual Peruvian, and the Peruvian news outlets and stuff. They were taking this very seriously.
Very serious, yeah.
And so the way I look at that, we, like you said, we kind of discard a lot of this stuff as, hokey or whatever, because that's been in our culture. But just like I've said before, and we talked about, I think the last time we were on together, we have on congressional record now grown men who are basically defending our country, saying that this is a real phenomenon and has been going on for decades, pushing at least, really a lot of this goes back to even 1800s. They've got some pictures and stuff of UFOs, if you will. But this is something that that we, especially as Christians, we have to take this seriously, because, as I said, my belief is that this is the main part of the great delusion that's going to come along. I had listened to, and I think I'd sent you guys that as well, but Sean Ryan has done interviews with 3 different guys talking about 3 different incidents and things that they had seen and all that. One of them talked about Peru in length and stuff that he saw there as well. But then here just the other day, I think it was Tuesday, he did the interview with Brian Fugel, who owns Skinwalker Ranch. And that was very telling in the spiritual aspect of this. And I'm not trying to disparage Brandon Fugel's religion or anything like that, but he is a Mormon, and it was really telling to me that his what they're looking for and their beliefs and all this lend to stuff that's out there and all that, but I don't think that's what we're seeing at all. And it's not just me. I mean, even there's been interviews with Lou Elizondo, and he plainly says on the record that even guys within the government were saying that there's a spiritual nature to this. This is not all, little green men from somewhere else. But like I said, my belief on that is, and it's rather complex. I agree with Damon in the fact that, yes, there is, we have demons that, my belief is they're disembodied spirits of the Nephilim. There are ties to what the Nephilim were, what they were in Canaan. I believe fast forward to what Revelation talks about, and I believe we're in those times now, and that's what we're seeing, that this is a form, if you will, of quote unquote fallen angel technology.
Right.
Are some of them fallen angels manifesting as something? Yes. I also believe that there is a factor of this, another particle of this, that this, you got the grays, the 3-foot small beings that people talk about that they've encountered, been abducted by, different stories. And I believe that these may be manufactured or created. Now, how that, what's the science behind that? I don't know. But this goes all the way back to the genetic manipulation that has been all through Scripture. It goes back from Genesis 6 on. And I believe that they're using these suits, to Damon's point, for demons to inhabit. But now we've got this factor of the Peruvian, and not only the Peruvian story, but the Las Vegas story of 7 to 10 foot tall grays in their backyard. These are far taller and larger than these small grays. Well, where does that come from? I don't know if those may be a closer byproduct, if you will. Maybe that is the offspring. I don't know if you guys remember, but there's been several celebrities that have stated that they had quote unquote sexual intercourse with spiritual beings. Kesha, she claims that.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Shirley MacLaine, she also claims that. So, and you've got other stories of women that actually said that they, had children by these quote unquote aliens and things like that, and they take the baby, and some of them have been able to go quote unquote go back and see their child. And then you've got the stories of what they call today the star children. The Matrix kind of touches on that point of these kids who have psychic abilities and metaphysical abilities and things like that. The X-Men is what that was really based on. So there is some truth. There's some truth to that. But how does all that play out? We don't know, but it is part of the deception, because from what I'm hearing, as I mentioned before, with the church and pastors and things like this, basically kind of adhering to this storyline and saying we got to do something with this, they're basically buying into the lie that God may have made some other creatures out here. And like I said, this goes back to even the stuff that the Vatican believes, that the Pope and others as well, that there may be some kind of correlation to these beings, may be outside of original sin, is what they believe. And that's not what Scripture bears out. And so it is moving us away from what God said into the realm of lies, which is the devil's domain. So,
yeah.
You know, a couple things. There's a lot of interesting stuff in what you just said. One thing I want to point out, and you mentioned it, because I was reading while you guys were talking. I was trying to read to see, was there any, because I thought someone else was injured or, face scarred or whatever. Yeah. But I couldn't find that. But the article said about the 7 foot, and I remembered, oh yeah, that's the other thing. So these are gold miners with complex, high technology jetpacks, which are impervious to, or which can fly better than any jetpack known to mankind that we've seen, any prototype we've seen. And they all happen to be 7 feet tall or better.
Right.
It's like only the tall guys. That's what they're doing when they're looking to mine gold down there, and say, hey, we want you in our criminal racket, but only, sorry, we got a measuring stick. It's like the amusement park. Yes, sir. You don't cut. You don't cut.
Hey, Paulie, get the tall guys over here. We got to go run on this village. Yeah. Scare them out of there, because we want the gold. I don't think that's a Peruvian accent, but I do my best.
That's right.
South Peru.
Yeah, South Peruvian.
And then of course, if you got a experimental gadget that can let you fly, you would want, of course, the largest human being you could find to wait for balancing it. Yeah. Anyway, so I'm sorry, I just can't get over that story. That's the way that they answered it. It's kind of like
I think more will come out about all this. There's some reporter out there that's heading down there to check everything out. So if you guys get any leads on that, send it to me and we'll bring it on here. But
this storyline you mentioned in the 7 foot tall alien, quote unquote aliens, and there's actual, when you go back and you look at the Las Vegas video, there's been some, there's some fake stuff out there and all that, but there is some guys that have taken the actual video footage when they first walk through the fence or through the gate, and I think the guy's wife or whatever, she comes in and they open the gate back up, and she's actually filming toward the heavy equipment. And if you look closely, and I've seen some of these that have been blown up, you can see some figures inside of that far excavator or whatever that's back there, and you can see the 2 dark eyes, the round head, and all that up in this big machine. It was pretty evident when I went back and looked at this stuff that you could see something. And you've seen the videos. They're legitimately scared because they're walking in there with guns. They're taking this seriously because they're walking back there with weapons. And as soon as they break the plane of the gate and all that, the guy sees the stuff and they turn around. The woman's like, oh, and they're getting out of there. So there were a couple videos where they slowed down. Is that what you're talking about? Where they slowed down the video and you could actually see what
was back there. It was kind of creepy.
Right. But to that point, they in the excitement and all that, they claim that they were, 8, 9, 10 foot tall or whatever.
Right.
But if it's 7 foot tall and it's back there in the dark and all that, yeah, you're going to exaggerate things a little bit, but 7 foot tall is big. But this,
a little bit bigger than me.
Right. And this, I've got a video here of a man named Phil Schneider who was killed. He was a geologist. He worked in the government, actually building underground facilities. And in this, he left that and basically became a whistleblower and talked about a lot of this stuff that was going on in these underground bases. And he claims that he built this base in Dulce, New Mexico, and that when he was lowered down into this shaft that they had dug to start this project, he was basically lowered down into a nest. And he tells on, and this is back in 95, I think, when this was when he did this conference. And I'll just let him speak for himself, but you'll hear what he says. And this is all the way back then. So let me bring this up.
No sound.
I'm not hearing anything, Bret.
Not?
Yeah, no sound, Bret.
Nope.
Let me see what I need to do here.
Well, while you're working on technical difficulties, let's see. So, one thing I was thinking, because you got me thinking on this question: what are the reasons for the grays, for the little things, for the big things, for the Nordics, all these different kinds, right? If they're all demons, or if they're all fallen angels, or some sort of hybrid, or Nephilim. But maybe there's another possibility. I'm reading from if you're ready to play it, if your video.
Well, let me just try. I don't know why it wouldn't be playing, because I'm hearing it and I hear you guys through as well. I don't know why it wouldn't. Let's try it again. See, just leave it on that screen like it is, Doc, and see if you can hear it that way.
Nope.
No sound.
Still no sound? Still no sound?
Still no sound.
Wow. Well, in this video,
what's the video called? I'll try and look it up real quick.
Let me see what it says here. I actually pulled this one up. This was actually, it looks like either a Danish or Swedish site. But just
what's his name?
Phil Schneider.
Okay.
And it's about a 30-minute long video, and this portion starts about the 18-minute mark. I don't know why it wouldn't be playing, but I don't know why it wouldn't be. Why you couldn't get the sound?
I've got one. I can try and see if I can get it.
If it's 30 minutes, go about to the 18-minute mark. That's where he mentioned.
I've got it on 18 minutes. So.
Okay.
All right. Matt, let me know if it's all right. Let's try this again, folks.
Melt rock out to build the large rooms that are required for this underground base. Well, in this process, I was lowered down the basket of one of these holes, and about from me to this elderly woman here in the front was sitting a 7 foot tall alien gray The stench was worse than the worst garbage can you can imagine. The person or the entity was absolutely horrible. I didn't waste any time or reach for my pistol. At that time, as an engineer, I didn't have time to carry all the folderol of one of these big submachine guns that all the sea spray and the yellow fruit and all the outer perimeter and inner perimeter security people carried. I carried a little Walther PPK pistol with a 9-shot clip. This was in late August of 1979. Now, you got a regular suit of clothes, you got a regular clothes on, plus you're in almost like a spacesuit environment, and you're reaching for a gun. It's not the easiest thing to do, and then to pop a clip in it and start shooting. And I killed 2 of them. Yes, they're mortal, and they do die. However, in the process, one of them did this. All I remember is that he just kind of waved his hand in front of his chest, and the next thing I know, this blue beam hit me and just literally opened me up like a fish, and burnt my fingers right off of me. And it was some form of electrical force, because the kind of like being hit by a lightning bolt burned all my toenails off of me. Completely crispy crittered my left foot, burnt the shoe right off of me. All I remember was the smoking remains, and I'm still conscious, but in and out of, I didn't remember much. And there was a Green Beret that was right behind me that risked his life. In fact, he died. But he risked his life. He shoved me back in the basket and hit the button and took me up. And I wouldn't be alive talking to you today if it wasn't for him. I'm forever indebted.
Okay.
He lost his life.
Stop it there.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's, like I said, this is just a portion. He talks a lot about, and he's got, some artifacts and stuff that he shows and all that. But he had a catheter wrapped around his neck, and so they, of course, they claim suicide or something like that. But yeah, he was murdered, just like Bill Cooper was murdered, because of the things that they were talking about. Unfortunately, that's the world that we live in today, because as we've seen from congressional testimony now, they've been keeping this stuff secret a long time. We've known about this stuff at least from the late 40s, but really it goes back way before then, because this is a spiritual thing. These entities that they're working with are present. They're I say masquerading, but I really don't know the complexity of that, because are they dealing with the literal fallen angels, or are they dealing with the offspring that has been biologically created? To that point, we were talking about the face peelers and all that. When you look at that video of that man, that skin has been removed, and you can see it around the neck area and all that. It's been removed almost with scalpel precision all the way around it. This has similar implications and the same signature as cattle mutilations, that they can go in and surgically remove anuses and eyeballs and the interior sexual organs of these cattle and things like that, and drain the complete blood. There's no blood, no trail of blood or anything else. And in that video of that man in Peru, it's the same situation. There's no blood around that at all. The skull is completely white. There's no blood coming out on the body, around the neck area, anything like that. And it's high strangeness, because that's exactly what I think. Because when you get all of these stories of the alien abduction side of this, it's always about the reproductive systems of not only humans, but as well as animals. Why the interest in this? Because it goes back to exactly what was going on all the way back in Genesis 6. We've got to mesh or melt ourselves with humanity. Jesus Christ came to die for humans. As I've said, there's a lot of religions out there that are claiming that, well, maybe he went to other planets and died for these other beings and things like that. I just don't think God's going to leave us in the dark on this stuff.
I agree.
In Daniel 2:43, if you want to flip over there real quick.
Yes.
It's just short, but I think it really has a bearing on what we're looking at today. Starting in, let's just start in 40, and I'll mention this. The fourth kingdom that's being talked about here, Nebuchadnezzar, remember, has this dream, this vision of this statue figure. Babylon being the head of gold. He's given the interpretation by Daniel. Medo-Persia, the chest and arms of silver. Medo-Persia, both sides of that. The belly of bronze or brass, which is Greece. That was Alexander the Great that came next in line. Then you have the legs of iron, which is the Roman kingdom. And the Roman kingdom has never left. They're still here. So this fourth kingdom that the Lord talks about, it says in verse 41, and whereas thou sawest the feet and toes, part of potter's clay and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided. But there shall be in it the strength of the iron, for as much as thou sawest the iron mixed with miry clay. And as the toes of the feet were part of iron and part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. And whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. In verse 44, and in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all of these kingdoms, and itself shall stand forever. And that stone that is not cut out by hands is Jesus Christ. He's going to strike this final kingdom and destroy it. But the point is these kings are these 10 kings that are to come. And this iron and miry clay, Rome is still a part of this. Rome has never left. So that mixes down into, and this is what I mentioned before when we've talked, that this worship of the host of heaven, that has never gone away. That's Old Testament all the way through. It's the same thing. All of these pagan kingdoms still worship everything except the one true God. And that has not changed. They are going to mingle. It's interesting that it says they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men. Well, it can't be men if they're mingling with the seed of men, because that makes no sense.
Right.
It's something other than men. And so that seed is zera or sperm, or basically you could say DNA, because that's really where we come from, is the DNA. And so they are mixing with that. And that project has been ever since the Garden of Eden, ever since the fall. That's been Satan's plan. And that's what Genesis 6 is all about, is that mixing of that bloodline. Number one, to keep Jesus Christ from being able to enter this domain to pay that price. They failed at that. And so now it's like, we've got to destroy the image of God. We've got to destroy mankind and make his image into our image, which is a beast image. So, but I'll stop at that.
All right.
Yeah, so I wanted to quote some Bible here too a little while ago, on the idea of what are these different species, if you will, that people talk about, the small grays, the Nordics, and all this type of stuff. Is we talked about some potential things, right? That it's breeding, right? Corruption. But, Revelation 4 talks about God's throne. It talks about Revelation 4:6, and before the throne there was a sea of glass like unto crystal. And in the midst of the throne, and round about the throne, were 4 beasts full of eyes, before and behind. And the first beast was like a lion, the second beast like a calf, and the third beast had a face as a man, and the fourth beast was a flying eagle. And the 4 beasts had each of them 6 wings about him, and they were full of eyes within, and they rest not day and night, saying, Holy, 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 Lord God Almighty, which was and is to come. Now that's a description of heavenly righteous beings.
Yeah, the
Created
cherubim.
by God, created by God for his blessing. Now we talk about the fallen angels, right? Is it possible that they had their own entities? So they had some other underling entities like this that really didn't have like these almost sound kind of like dogs and cats or something like that we have, to some degree. And maybe those were fallen with them, and that's what the reason is, so some of these that are doing the anal probing and all that type of stuff, right, are doing kind of like the dirty work. They're like the janitor crew for the demons and the fallen angels, and they're trying to do the experimentation, drag out the DNA out of their captives and everything. I don't know, there's not a whole lot, I'm going to say,
Right.
outside of this biblical description of
Right.
very fantastical creatures that God has for his adoration. What else is in heaven? What else is in the heaven that is separate from our earth? Yeah.
I find it interesting too, Damon, to that point, that basically every species of creation is represented within these cherubim that are at the throne protectors, if you will, because Ezekiel sees these same things that John sees, but every being is represented here except for serpentine or scaled type creatures. And if you'll remember that when the flood came in Noah's day, we want to believe, because it says all flesh on the earth was killed except for Noah and his family, but not what was in the water, and not may have gone underground, if you will. And that's why I tend to believe, and we've heard this from even the congressional testimony and things like that there is a tie to water in a lot of these craft and creatures and things like that. Why is that? Because I believe that Luke speaks to that. He talks about the things that man's heart is going to fail him for fear of the things that are coming up on the earth. I don't think that they're out there as much as they are right here in the inner earth. And I think we touched on this a little bit the last time, and we could get into that more if you want to. But the Bible is clear that hell is within the earth. That being said, just to Doc's point and all that I think it was that the abyss is going to be, or no, I think it was Damon, that the abyss and these locusts and stuff that's described, the man of sin, or Satan himself, is basically going to be released and enter into this man of sin, who's going to be, quote unquote, what we would call the Antichrist. But I like to stay to the biblical description, the man of sin, the son of perdition, and that he is going to, basically the kings are going to come, as I said, before he shows up. So that's what we're seeing as things get in line in our culture today. And now we're talking about these things, and people are starting to take notice that, hey, this is happening with more frequency. We're starting, within less than a month period of time, we went from Las Vegas aliens in the backyard to a congressional hearing to aliens in Peru now. I mean, what's next? I mean, I could wake up tomorrow and there could be, like I said, craft all over the world. And
Right.
what is that going to do? And I think I had mentioned it before that, Brandon Fugel was interviewed by Sean Ryan, and he talked about his experience at Skinwalker. He had never had an experience before. So he said, I wasn't a believer or anything like that. He said, but 6 months in, he said, I witnessed something with other people there. And he says, I'm no longer a believer. He said, it's fact. I'm an experiencer and I can't unsee what I've seen. Same thing with David Fravor, Ryan Graves, anybody that has seen anything. And I believe that that's really what's going to affect the quote unquote Christian community, that whenever they see something standing there on the lawn of the White House or with the Pope or however this is laid out, what is that going to do to their faith? Because I know what they're going to say. It's nowhere in here. And that's why we need to look at these things. Number one, Daniel and Revelation being symbolic books in some sense, that there's things that we need to look at, because we're not going to have a seven-headed, 10-horn red dragon walking around. This was a description of these kingdoms that are under this beast lord who is Satan. So we have to take these things and look at them through the lens that the Lord has given us through John, and compare these things to what we're seeing in the world today. That stuff has to be interpreted correctly, because if we don't, and this has been the downfall of a lot of our beliefs and why we have so many different denominations and everything else, because if we don't get this right, Jesus himself said 4 times in Matthew 24, don't let anybody deceive you. So
Right.
I've heard it in my own churches that Christians cannot be deceived. We're going to know, but the Bible tells me different. He says, if we're not watching, if we're not paying attention, if we're not studying, if we're not looking at this stuff in the world and discerning this stuff correctly, we can be deceived. That's the devil's whole MO. I mean, that's what he does. So,
right.
Well, I think it's like, I like to take that positively, and I think I've mentioned that before on this, and maybe on the Sunday night with Matt thing. But when it says word possible, even the elect could be deceived, I think it means that if you truly are the elect, but that's the thing. It's like, are you truly saved? Are you truly the elect? I think there's a lot of people who may not be, right? So to folks like us, when that happens, if that happens, when that happens, 8-foot alien on the lawn, right? We're going to know exactly what it is. But there's going to be a whole ton of people out there who are thinking, hey, Jesus is supposed to come pick me up.
yeah.
And because they're not reading this, they're listening to some pastor saying, oh, you're going to be taken out of here before all the terrible stuff comes. And that's going to be the great falling away. That's going to be the great deception. That's why this is worth us having this discussion. And I pray more people see it and think about this. They don't have to believe everything that we're saying, but I mean, there's a lot of biblical evidence, and maybe the best thing is, like, you're not getting a clear answer from the government, so why not believe what the scripture says? Why not believe what faithful people are saying? This is probably it's probably something related to this stuff that's in the Bible, because otherwise you're going to get the answer of, hey, there's 7-foot gold miners out there attacking people hoverboards.
Yeah.
Right.
Back to the Future.
Next thing you know, like you were saying, man, next thing you know, you're gonna wake up and there's gonna be like an island state that's gonna be completely burnt up without any trees having been burnt.
For real.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's a whole nother subject.
That's a whole nother. Yeah. Exactly.
But it does have potentially something to do with what we talked about, energy devices.
Yeah, very much so. I agree that the stuff in California as well. I mean, I saw it's identical, and
the Canadian wildfires. I mean, there's all
Yes.
kinds of crazy anomalies
yes,
happening all around us that have never happened as frequently as they are happening today.
that's right.
Are you guys willing to do a part 8 on this?
I'm good for whatever, wherever you
All
want
right.
to go. Yeah.
Damon, are you?
I'm
All
in. You just got to say it, and we're in. So,
Okay. Part
I
8
think you
next.
routine with some subjects, but every now and then, but it's good. Yeah.
Part 8 next Thursday, 8:30, right here wherever you watch us tonight.
Let's get into Admiral Byrd maybe in the Hollow
Yeah.
Earth.
Oh,
and,
we meant to do that
Antarctica.
tonight.
Yeah.
Antarctica.
Okay. And then the Peru thing happened, so we got into that.
Yeah.
Admiral Byrd next Thursday night. That's what we're going to talk about.
Sounds good.
Indeed. All right. Thanks, fellas, for joining me. Thanks for everybody watching tonight and watching later. We appreciate you. It's
Love y'all.
good old love y'all too. It's a good old fashioned conversation. So there it is. Talk to y'all